Hi, everybody.
I just started the recording, so we are at the time. Do we want to wait? Andreas is here. Thank you, Andreas and Patrick. Both of you are here. Appreciate it. Cool. Okay, let's get started. Today is June 13th. This is the Kubernetes migration working group. Let's get started from the agenda. So first is what has been done. Amy, is that your update or me?
It's my update. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Should we jump? Do you want to jump straight to the discussion? Though, because I think Andres, you can only join us for a short while. Is that right?
Okay. Yeah. Let's get to the discussion first,
and then we can do the updates.
Actually, it looks like I can stay for the full half an hour after all. Thank you.
Okay. At this point, I guess let's start with the discussion. In any case, we switch to that. I put this topic in the agenda, and I pinged you directly a couple of times, I think last week, to be sure that we have the right people in this call to try to take a decision here. So the main topic, the main reason why I put this in the agenda is try to understand what we want to do with the GitLab on Kubernetes, and if there is a decision that has been taken or to migrate the current Kubernetes, the current GitLab service into Kubernetes, or if there any plan to do that. This is a request from delivery that we need to understand if we need to plan any migration ongoing, or if it's something that is still under the discussion or is taking other ways. I understand if there is a plan to migrate GitLab.com into the GitLab cluster. So right now we're asking that because we are actually the last standing item that we have in the migration into Kubernetes, and we would like to get to a decision point.
I mean, I think the big question here is, from my understanding, GitLab does run as a service in Kubernetes right now with certain limitations. I don't know how extensively it's been tested, but I do know that it's not that it has not been running. I think the question becomes, what form of GitLab are we trying to support in Kubernetes, and how out of the box do we want to make it? GitLab cluster poses a more interesting question because it requires the prefect database currently and storage nodes. And auto-scaling storage nodes is a terrible idea. I think everybody kind of has agreed on that. The question becomes, do we want to auto-scale the prefect database, or how do we want to handle that within Kubernetes? So I guess I just want to make sure we're all on the same page here. I don't think we're migrating GitLab to anything. GitLab in and of itself should run in Kubernetes. But I don't believe there's a migration step necessary. We're not taking and making a separate version of GitLab for Kubernetes. That's not the plan. GitLab as it is should run in Kubernetes. And I think that's our goal.
May I also ask why? And on the very bottom, I guess customers are asking for this, but what type of installation are we trying to support short term?
Yeah, I can talk about why, maybe from a dedicated and overall other perspective, and of course the delivery team can do it as well. But most of our direction is to move towards cloud native deployments of GitLab at a very high level. We've seen a lot of benefits from operating that way with Rails and other services, and you also get a lot more capability in terms of operators to do like day 2 automation, because you have a control plane that runs in Kubernetes like persistently, whereas without it, you have something like Terraform or Ansible, which is sort of like point in time operations. So that's the direction we're going. Without GitLab running in Kubernetes, we have a sort of fairly more complex architecture. So you have a lot of services running in Kubernetes, and then you have really only GitLab running outside of Kubernetes. And then you have, at least for dedicated, we have AWS managed services for everything else. Elasticsearch, RDS for Postgres, Elasticache, right? And so really the only thing running on VMs is GitLab today. And we'd like to be able to get everything over to Kubernetes and have an operator which can then start to take care of it and look after it, over its life cycle. I'm not sure that helps summarize. And others, please chime in with your thoughts, but that'd be my 2 cents.
Can we maybe just touch real quick on the limitations that we've seen? I know there's a lot of history in this this issue or Epic, and so I wanted to just make sure that we're still seeing, like, I saw like the IOPS stuff essentially causing the memory to blow it out, and then we have processes that get killed, causing problems. Is that still kind of the general consensus or issue that we're up against?
I would assume so. I think it feels a little bit like a fundamental of is GitLab service able to just be lifted and shifted onto Kubernetes? And it sounds like no is probably the answer to that. But yes, theoretically, like it would work with some constraints. But I think I don't think we in the testing that's happened so far, we've seen this is specifically the type of problem that runs into those like performance issues that we suspect probably are there.
Yeah, I think it might also be interesting just to try and see what we can do, right? Like, I know we want to have like a constrained memory footprint for GitLab, and because Kubernetes runs better that way. But the alternative we have today is we have dedicated a whole VM to GitLab. And I realized that swap is like not a thing in Kubernetes. So like if we bump up into swap, that's a problem, but hopefully we're not doing that. But we could just in the short term, just sort of give the VM containers just a really high like resource limit, similar to what we'd be doing anyways in the VMs, and just see what happens. And then over time, chip away at it a little bit, right?
My understanding is that has been done by customers currently. Like we see issues from customers who are running GitLab on Kubernetes, and yes, they do have to allocate substantial resources to it, but it does run. I have yet to have specifics as to what doesn't work under Kubernetes, aside from we do have the memory constraints that come, and my understanding is those come from underlying Git and how Git works. That's something we need to work around and understand better. But I don't think right now there is a complete blocker for running GitLab in Kubernetes. My understanding is it does run. There's just these limitations, like you need to have substantial resources allocated to it so we don't run into the resource limitation issues we've seen in some of the testing.
Thank you, Mark. So, I mean, mainly the reason of the question is just like, I understand that Git can run in Kubernetes, and probably, we spoke about a lot of limitations, maybe that part of Git or the part of the architecture that we have here. The ask here is just mainly, do we plan as a delivery team to migrate this in the current status or not? So it's just simply understanding what we can do in the future. I think is a different kind of effort than what we would like to discuss here. I understand that probably there will be some adaptation to GitLab itself to be more cloud native oriented, but the main question is like, are we planning to migrate it as is, or are we transform that as in a different effort?
I mean, personally, I would love to see us use it as is now and identify what those problems are as they crop up. I think the difficulty from the GitLab team has been and continues to be, without people running it, it's hard to know what doesn't work. We know if we give it expansive resources, it seems to work, but we haven't stress tested that in any meaningful way other than what's in the issue that's been linked by Dylan. And I think we understand those limitations, but I'd love to have more exposure and more dogfooding of that, such that we can start writing those issues when we run into them, so that the team can focus on those as they get prioritized.
I understand. I guess it's still as a different effort, right? It's not something that as a delivery team we can take on to, but I guess it's probably more investigation needed on your side. So correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't see these happening anytime soon in migrating Kubernetes as is on Gitly as is into Kubernetes.
What are you looking for our team to do?
Looking to do is just like to be sure and work together with the delivery team to build up a plan to move the current services into Kubernetes, but clearly to be sure that the service runs smoothly in Kubernetes is also something that your team has to do there.
Excuse my ignorance. When you say migrate, is this about GitLab.com production or is this about customer installations?
GitLab.com production.
Okay.
Yeah, I think personally, it's going to be hard, as someone also from distribution can maybe speak to, is it's hard to really understand all the edge cases without actually using it sort of in anger. In some position, you can try and like run GPT and things like that, but they're only going to push it so hard. You know, so maybe we can take a bit of a phased approach here, which is, you know, run GPT against it, see what happens. Grant and team may have already done that, right? And if that blows up, then we can sort of get the baseline of, you know, this might not be really ready for anything, but provided that works, and I think it does, because we have customers, as you know, Mark mentioned, running fully in Kubernetes today with Gitly running there, so it at least provides some minimum, you know, baseline of functionality, and maybe we just grab some repositories that we're okay with going down once in a while, you know, some internal ones like GitLab-org, GitLab-com. I'm not sure we can shift a few over, but maybe we can get some that have some level of usage. Kind of like how we got started with Prefect, right? I think we got started with Prefect with dub, perhaps. Maybe that's too big to get started with, but it would be interesting to try and see if we can just get one or two over, and then just seeing what happens.
Well, I guess I just want to also clarify, the Gitly team currently does not have on our roadmap migrating .com over. That is somebody else's purview from my understanding. We are here to support you, but we have no action to move things over as part of our team's plans currently. If that needs to change, I need to do a lot of replanning, because it has never been our intention to maintain GitLab.com on Kubernetes as a Gitly team. We're providing Gitly. We're happy to assist, but I am not, nor does the team, planning on doing the migration internally.
And I think that's correct, Mark. Like, I think the sort of question here is like, do we want to prioritize delivery, doing the actual moving of things and getting Kubernetes set? What we probably would require time from Gitly for would be if we hit upon, you know, Gitly doesn't work in these circumstances, like, would you be able to prioritize some fixes or things like that? I mean, at the moment, we don't know what those are, but that would probably be as much as we'd be expecting.
Excellent. No, I am in complete agreement with that. And I think I'm more than willing to allocate time to support that, you know, and there are some competing priorities here with things like FIPS testing is currently taking over the bulk of our software engineering test as of current. Therefore, the work on testing within Kubernetes has been put on the back burner currently. I know the FIPS effort should be coming to a close here in the next couple of months. Therefore, there will be more opportunity for our test engineer to focus more on the Kubernetes side if more testing is desired.
I might be catching up here, so if I'm saying something that's not right, please let me know. So we did run GPT, I guess a 3K environment with Gitly and Packer and Kubernetes. What else is needed at this point then?
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know that the work had been done, and I think we just need to review that. I agree, Vinci. I don't know the exact implications of what additional is requested. Can anybody scope that a little bit?
I think there was a discussion whether we want to, after migration, whether we want to run cluster or a single node Gitly there. So the testing was done as a single node Gitly. And so this is probably a question for the delivery team or for the infrastructure team, that whether we want to run the Gitly cluster in GitLab.com production, or we want to run the single node that's sufficient. So that is the first question to answer here, then decide to move forward. And to be very clear, this working group is about migrating the GitLab.com production environment, nothing about self-managed or other environments.
To my mind, running cluster versus running Kubernetes, those are almost independent, no? Because cluster is like the storage layer, but you're talking about ease of management of .com.
Pardon my ignorance, but I think the last time we talked about this, and I probably have the wrong wording for this, the issue became having a Kubernetes cluster, which ran the Gitly service, reach out to standalone VMs that contain the storage nodes and the prefect database. And that was something that we had not explored deeply, because our initial thought was, let's get Gitly running in Kubernetes, the service Gitly running in Kubernetes, accessing a single node storage that can expand if necessary, because that's just your baseline testing. Once we have that working, the next step was to understand what would it look like to have a prefect database, internal or external to the Kubernetes ecosystem. What would it look like to have storage nodes, internal or external to the ecosystem of Kubernetes? Those are some of the challenges that we hadn't necessarily scoped yet, because we hadn't really proven the Gitly service itself would run happily. And we thought there was probably an opportunity for additional optimization there before we delved into this prefect database and external storage node. That was my understanding as of a couple months ago when we last discussed, but I'm happy to revise that if people have other impressions.
It makes sense to me, and I'm not sure. I mean, it might be that Gitly is not the right service to start with. Maybe it's prefect, but as long as we keep the database out of it, like I think from my perspective, I think it's just important for us to start getting concrete data on how Gitly runs in Kubernetes, and then just start to make some progress, right? Either we find bugs and we can fix them, or we get more confidence and we keep going until we find bugs. You know what I mean? And I think until we get started in that sort of feedback cycle, it's going to be hard to really make progress here, unless you spend a whole bunch of time building like complex test harnesses and things like that. But in some ways, it seems like we might just, given we have customers doing it today, it might make sense to just pick a few repositories and get started with whatever service makes the most sense to get started with. But I agree that we'll probably need to have some time allocated from Gitly to support and think through repositories and which ones would make sense and what size of them would make sense, and obviously delivery too. And so whatever we can, like if that's not now because of other timelines, then hopefully we can get scheduled soon, but we'll probably need some time on both.
Understand. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's helpful. That's just my opinion, by the way. So if others,
yeah, I understand. But I guess in any case, this is something that need to be. I mean, I take it that right now in the current state is a no. We don't deploy on Kubernetes, and correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe this is going to change to a different kind of effort, as I said before, but it's probably something that needs to be prioritized also on Gitly side team to understand, to test better and address the issues that right now are causing concern in migrating that.
I think we don't actually know what is causing concern, and that's why we should try it out, see what problems exist today, because we've made a lot of performance improvements recently, and then iterate from there. I agree with Joshua that move some repositories over, not super important ones, hopefully, and then see what happens. And then this is independent of any kind of cluster deployment, just a single node Gitly installation on Kubernetes.
Okay. Then if we start to proceed in this direction, can the team help us to understand which repos we should start to move?
or maybe reliability could perhaps help. So I guess the question is like, what's something we can move that's not catastrophic if it goes down for some time? So perhaps we could, perhaps we can help get reliability to help us figure that one out.
Yeah, you want some kind of regular amount of traffic, but exactly like not one where reliability is going to be on call, getting paged, and under a, like, you know, an SLA to try and get it fixed.
Cool. I can help you with that one, Michaela. Like, I think we could probably grab Dave and Steve and co and come up with some options that we perhaps run past everyone else, but we could probably find one or two to start things off with.
Okay, thank you.
Could be like the internal handbook or something like that. It's relatively small.
Yeah, the internal handbook's probably a good choice. I would have said dub, but that's running cluster, so we don't want to convolute it additionally, I think, by trying to do that. So yeah, I think something like the internal handbook's a great opportunity. If we go down, we're only hurting ourselves. The SLA for that is, I mean, while important, not super critical, and we can work around any sort of issues we run into. But again, I am open to any discussion. That just was one off top of the mind that doesn't seem like it would be a bad idea.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Does that give you enough baseline data? Sorry.
Go ahead.
So say we are talking about testing with live data essentially. So how do we define that, or how do we declare victory? When is it good enough?
Well, I think this is a great question. I would love to gather baseline data. Like, let's, for instance, say we're going to do the internal handbook. I'd love to gather baseline data for a week in some meaningful way, define what those parameters would be, gather it, and then transition it and gather the same data again and see what the performance differences are. Obviously, if it goes down, that's a problem and we can identify that immediately, but it's the less obvious things that I think are where we're more concerned. It's easy to identify critical problems. It's harder to identify a lingering performance issue that starts growing over time. And those are the types of things that I think we're much more curious to gather once we've overcome the initial hurdle of getting it running correctly, if there is one.
Yeah, I think we can take a look. I know Skarbek's done a lot of analysis on things as we've migrated them through in the past. So perhaps once we've figured out which repo to go with first, we can grab Skarbek and actually figure out like what sort of things have we seen in the past, what tools and things have we had running, and figure out what data we'll be able to get.
Well, not to volunteer people, but I know Patrick's done a lot of work on the performance side of Gitly as well. So if there's specific parameters we're interested in, it would be great to collect those and make sure that we're seeing those as well, because sometimes the data we need does not necessarily coalesce with the data that other teams are primarily focused on.
Right. So if we stick it in an issue somewhere, we can give you a ping, maybe Patrick, and we can figure the stuff out.
Yeah, sure. Happy to do so.
And what we should be able to do, if it ends up going similar to any of our previous migrations, we should be able to run them side by side for quite a while, and that gives us some nice comparisons. So hopefully it's not so much a case of like, was that some unusual event, but we can actually literally compare VM to a Kubernetes cluster.
No, excellent. That sounds fantastic.
Great. Is there anything else you need, Michaela? Like, it sounds like, we've got a fairly decent plan to actually try and identify some repos and figure out a way to get this set up somewhere on the clusters so we can actually start comparing.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Anyone else has anything to add to the discussion, or I guess we can move to the next point? I guess I'm gonna go next. So Camo proxy migration is in progress. Last time we communicated it was about to be deployed in staging. A couple of weeks is deployed in staging right now, is working properly and taking traffic. The next step is to deploy production and accept traffic. There were some questions about security. We actually look at the security assessment that has been done 3 years ago, and we make sure that all the requirements be fit again. And there was a requirement that was clearly not applicable anymore, and then we work with network policies to fulfill that one as well. So everything is going pretty smoothly there. Yeah, all done for the next steps.
Great. And one of the other pieces we have coming up is we're working on the HPA stabilization window seconds. So this came out of a scalability alert, but we have, well, the MR is in progress to get this into the chart so other people can also make use of this as well.
Cool. So that's the end of the topic, and we are also at the time. Thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.